had a first good step with that, in that we had a sex worker speaker on the plenary as a result of the work of a number of sex worker activists around the world. So congratulations to everybody who worked for that, and it was definitely a good first step. Marianne, could you finish on a positive note, I hope, with saying a bit about where you have found support? And I know that the situation you describe is slightly different, in that you're talking about zones and sex workers being, in theory, allowed to work in zones. Does that mean that sex workers are satisfied with that, or are some sex workers pressing for full decriminalisation so that you won't be only restricted to zones?
First of all, I have to tell you that only 10% of the sex workers are working on the streets of Hungary. So the majority of the sex workers are just hiding behind those, or in clubs, or in brothels. But we have a huge trouble to understand the law, not to understand, to accept the law, because the law says that you're allowed to do sex work only on your own property. So if I own a house in the center of Budapest, then I can be a sex worker. If I don't, if I have to rent, or if I have to, I don't know, look for some place, then I'm not allowed to work. So in this very moment, they can give me again a fine, or they can start a criminal case against me, which is just pushing us back to the point that how we can support sex workers out of poverty who really have to support their family, if they are unable to buy a second apartment just to do sex work. Because of course, if you have children, you cannot do sex work in your own apartment. So again, you have to have another place. So we are just feeling like in a catch all the time, because one hand is giving something according to Hungarian law, and the other one is just taking away everything. So the girls and the boys, and also the transgender people, they try to survive just like being illegal, instead of going to legality and legalization, legitimacy, how you say that? Legislation, yeah, legalization. Because if I go legal, it's just causing me a whole lot of trouble. So I want to be one of the society, I want to pay tax, I want to pay social security, I want to send the kids to school, but if I do it in a legal way, I'm going to be punished. So this is a huge thing to change, and time hopefully is going to help us, because many people are trying to help us. We have supporters among you. I mean, here's a SWAN representative, actually SWAN coordinator, Aliyah. SWAN is supporting us. We are applying for projects all time after time. But right now we just come to a situation when all of you knows there is an economic trouble around the world. So actually, if Mama Cash wasn't founding us the last year, we should just have to shut down the doors, and then we are going to be unable to help for the sex workers. So I don't know, I have a whole list in my head about the supports in the last 13 years. But one thing to mention about support and looking for donors, it's very hard to look for donors if we talk about sex work, because as sex workers are afraid of being stigmatized just because of the occupation. Can you imagine the donors? They also, individual donors, most of the time, they want to be just not known, because they are afraid of the same stigmatizing. If you support a sex worker group then you have something to do with sex work. Yeah, what is a crime in that, you know? If you do or not. But so it's very hard for us to find support, and on national level right now we have almost none. But since I become involved with this activism, which is like 3.5, almost 4 years, I learned to know Swan. Swan, as I told, is an Eastern Europe and Central Asian advocacy network on sex work. And I learned NSWP, which is a global network on sex work projects. I learned APNSW, Asian Pacific. As many times I'm traveling in representing this subject, this manner, you know, I just found out that we have a lot of support. But we need you, feminists, also to support us and give us a chance to make our own decision. And yeah, it's very good that a feminist willing to rescue women and humankind, but we ask if we need to be rescued, and if we don't, let's find a way to communicate and represent women's rights also with the freedom of choice, you know. Please let me make my own decision. I want to be a sex worker, then I'm going to be a sex worker. Please understand that and stop the violence and try to help us to be decriminalized. Thank you.